All right, well, my name is Bongani Bingwa, and welcome to this occasion. I know a lot of people who have been working behind the scenes for a number of days, weeks, months. If you see some droopy eyes, you'll know who they are. It's my great pleasure to be your MC this evening as we relaunch DALRO this evening. And, you know, the cliches are many, right? But we always say cliches are cliches because they often ring so true in so many ways. And so really today is a coming together, which is a beginning. And of course they say keeping together is progress, but what success is working together. A dream like what tonight represents is not something that happens through magic, but rather it happens through hard work, to commitment, to dedication, to a lot of sweat. And really what tonight is a celebration of the creators of all the different works that are going to be housed under DALRO. And I think it's important to acknowledge the artists and the contributors and the creators of the works ultimately, because they are the reason we are here. So I want to welcome everybody. I certainly want to welcome gathered media, and tonight will unfold and really explain itself. DALRO, the Dramatic, Artistic and Literary Rights Organization, is a collective management organization and reproduction rights organization that has been around since 1967. And as a collective management organization, DALRO manages and licenses copyright on behalf of rights holders, and as a reproduction rights organization, it manages and licenses the reproduction of print and publishing works. So really, today we're about celebrating, but also protecting the artistic community. Everything from plays to musical, to paintings, to drawings, sculptures, engravings, photographs, newspaper articles, essentially all forms of writing, be it books, poems, regardless of the medium or format of expression. We will be having an opportunity for invited media to engage with our panelists and really just to find out more, in more detail, what the organization stands for. There'll be opportunities for interviews in the boardroom. That's going to be a little later on. I'll direct you to that at the end. We do encourage people, although we want your phones on silent, we don't want you to put them away. So we do want you to use them, especially when it comes to social media. So if you would please use the hashtag DALRO launch. That's the hashtag DALRO launch, and of course do tag DALRO's handle, which is at the DALRO. That's the same for Twitter, and that's the same for Instagram. We don't have a very long program this evening, but we're going to have a number of facilitated conversations that are really going to delve in some detail in terms of what the organization stands for and what it's about. But really, the purpose of tonight is the launch of a new chapter on a journey that I say began in 1967. Perhaps before we do anything else, let me take this opportunity to say, let's watch an introductory video about DALRO.
Have you ever wondered what drives us? That thing that inspires us, makes our eyes shine and motivates us to achieve more and more. We at DALRO are driven by impartiality, integrity, efficiency, and commitment. Our constant investment in education and the development of a robust team of experts has enabled us to grant users permission to use copyright-protected works while ensuring that copyright holders' rights are protected and that they are remunerated for the use of their works. Everything started in 1967 for us. Since then, we've grown year after year, striving always for excellence and to efficiently license the use of published dramatic, artistic, and literary copyrighted works. Dramatic works refers to plays and musicals. Artistic works include drawings, sculptures, engravings, and photographs. Literary works encompasses essentially all forms of writing, be it books, poems, or newspaper articles, regardless of the medium or format of expression. We have always kept our eyes on the future and are guided by our vision to be an industry-leading collective management organization that focuses on protecting and growing the value of copyright. As a collective management organization and reproductive rights organization, DALRO is part of an international community, enabling it to represent copyright holders from around the world and grant protection for South African copyright holders around the world. On the user side, being part of an international community enables DALRO to grant users access to and issue licenses for local and international works. Do you want legal access to reproduce, copy or share works without the burden of having to track down copyright holders for permission? Contact us to obtain a license for the plays and musicals, the paintings and sculptures, or the books, poems, or articles you want to use. Are you a published author, artist, or playwright? Mandate DALRO to administer your copyright so that you can concentrate on doing what you do best while being remunerated for the use of your work by others. We are DALRO. We efficiently license the use of published dramatic, artistic, and literary copyrighted works and distribute royalties.
All right, so that's essentially the background for this evening. Now, here I was a little earlier on talking about honoring the artists who create these works. And it would be very remiss of me not to say, folks, for those of you who were here from the beginning, please shall we show a round of applause in appreciation for Bra Prince Lengwasa and his band who were performing for us a little earlier on. And of course, we've got some CDs on sale, so let's put our mouths well, money rather, where our mouths are, and try and purchase those CDs. Those are available for sale this evening. All right, as I said earlier, we're going to have some facilitated conversations. There will be an opportunity at the end for a bit of a Q&A, so if you've got questions that you can make note of during the conversations, we'll try and give you some answers at the end. Without any further ado, then, I'm going to invite our facilitator for the evening, and he will introduce his panelists and the conversations that they're going to have. And of course, you know, I'm also very pleased to tell you that our facilitator was, until very recently, a member of the family, and one can never really leave family, can they? So until very recently, Mr. Alroy Phyllis Bell, who is our facilitator this evening, was indeed with DALRO. He is currently the Senior Manager of Operations and Administration at the Javed Arts Center at the University of Pretoria. And he holds a BA Honours from UCT in Theatre Directing and Drama Education, and is currently completing his MA in Cultural Policy and Management at Wits University. So he's got a background in theatre, in dance production, arts development, teaching, copyright, and project management. As I say, he was until recently, of course, with the DALRO family, and one can never leave family. So he's going to be with us this evening. His role at DALRO was around building a more copyright compliant arts industry in South Africa and really equipping visual artists, playwrights, and authors with the necessary knowledge to safeguard their arts businesses and their intellectual property rights. So we're going to start with a conversation with Lazarus Serobe, who is, of course, the managing director of DALRO, really just to unpack DALRO, who the organization is, and why we find ourselves in these plush new offices. And you may already have noted that the walls are very, very impressive indeed. And then we're going to have an introduction of copyright conversation, but all of that to be facilitated by Mr. Elroy Phyllis Bell.
I'd like to invite DALRO's MD, Mr. Lazarus Serobe, to the panel over here to have a quick chat with me. Lazarus Serobe is the managing director of the Dramatic, Artistic and Literary Rights Organization. He's held this post since December 2014. The administration and management of processes are his primary responsibilities, as well as maintaining healthy stakeholder relationships, particularly with copyright holders, major copyright users, and service providers. Lazarus brings solid academic credentials. He holds an LLM in intellectual property law from the University of Johannesburg, an LLB, and a BA law degree from the University of Witwatersrand. The development of a self-sustaining DALRO is Lazarus's primary driver for the next few years. Lazarus is an avid lover of the arts, music, visual arts, performing arts, and reading. He enjoys conversation, walking, attending festivals, fairs, and art exhibitions, as well as traveling. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Is that me?
Yes, that's you. Thank you for having me back.
Welcome back.
It's really, really wonderful to be here. I've always said that DALRO has the most incredible people I've ever worked with. And I'm sure our stakeholders and our copyright holders feel the same way as they interact with our staff. I mean, I say our staff like I'm still here. But I think the main conversation that I want to have with you is DALRO itself. I think DALRO is we've heard it's a almost 55-year-old organization now, and a lot of changes come with that. But before we get into that, I want to understand, how would you describe DALRO? What is it?
At the moment, it feels like a 55-year-old who's just been chased out of home.
Okay.
to start a new life.
All right, okay.
Yeah. Well, the way I see DALRO is really as a facilitator, as a middle entity, as an agent for rights holders to protect their intellectual property, but also as a facilitator of use. We pride ourselves in making the lives of users easier in their day-to-day work at higher institutions of higher learning, corporate entities, through ourselves and our partners in various areas.
Yeah, and those partners are very wide-ranging. I mean, Bongani has also mentioned the fact that, and the video was speaking about that you're catering to visual artists, to writers, outside of only the scope of university usages.
Yeah, we cater for visual artists, we cater for literary authors, and for dramatic and playwriters, of course. But the users are also quite varied. As you can imagine, the users vary from educational places to corporates, to individuals who may want to utilize, to auction houses in the arts, to museums and galleries. So it's quite varied.
I mean, we speak about how varied it is, and I actually, you heard my background is in theater, and my first interaction with DALRO was as a high school student doing a musical and having a DALRO script in my hand. So, I mean, that's quite a varied basis. You're dealing with schools, to universities, to auction houses, to museums, to advertisers who want to put things on billboards. So I think it's a very interesting place to be holding this licensing ecosystem across the country. Can you tell us more about who makes up DALRO? So tell us about some of the board members.
Okay, we've got a very small and agile board, and most of them are here today, but they represent the rights holders that we also represent. There's Mr. Brian Wafaroa, who's the chairman of the Publishers Association of South Africa, PASA, but he's also the CEO of Juta Publishers. And we've got Milisutando Bongela. I don't know if Milisutando has arrived yet. Who's a writer, a filmmaker, and a journalist. So represents that community of authors. And we've got Professor Ngubani, who's the chairman of the board, and he is an author, and in the indigenous language author, and professor at the University of UKZN. I don't know if I'm forgetting anyone. And we've got Jared Sinman, who's the a digital publisher and a marketing person who's unfortunately not here today.
It's quite a broad representation in that board, and I'm sure they all bring
and we're hoping to bring on more people to represent the visual arts, which is currently not represented on the board. That will change soon.
So you mentioned, and we were alluding to the fact that we're here for a moment, aren't we? The DALRO's gone through a seismic shift in many ways. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that shift has been and what has brought us here?
Yeah, as I said, Dad said, "You're over 50, go away."
Okay.
And we've literally had to find our feet and are starting a new chapter. Change of ownership, a change of shareholding. So from being owned previously by the previous shareholder, who's a music rights organization, to being represented and owned by the people that you represent. And as our new partners, shareholders now, we have VANZA, the Visual Arts Network of South Africa. We've got the Publishers Association of South Africa, who's also now, and the ANFASA, which is the Academic and Non-Fiction Writers Association of South Africa. So those are the new shareholders of DALRO.
And I think what opportunities are presented by having this this change in ownership and this opportunity to open your wings up in a new way as an organization?
I think first of all, for me, the creator comes first. That's the opportunity to be that close to the creators, to the people that give us the content and the works that we represent, for them to have a say in what we do is a great opportunity, because without them, we really are not going to go anywhere.
And now we find ourselves in this beautiful office. It's a lot better than the old one. I can tell you, having worked in the old space. I'm very jealous not working here now. It's remarkable. We're surrounded by some incredible masters of South African art and contemporary artists. What does this space mean for you?
For me, our dream, our vision was to have a very interactive space. So you'll see when you come in, you literally would be walking into a gallery space. There's no people sitting, working in that space. It's going to be, it presents itself as a gallery space, and also a conference center. So we're hoping to have educational activities to educate, because that's what we think is one of our primary reasons for existence, to educate people, to educate artists, authors about their rights, the protection of their intellectual property. So not only are we going to have various exhibitions, but also talks, workshops, and just opportunities to expand the knowledge of copyright.
Thanks, Les. So I think without further ado, I'd like to show the video around what this space means to the team.
Our new DALRO office. How exciting is this? Our new space presents an opportunity for us to bring together 4 fantastic core functions of our Enjoy venture. In essence, we wanted the space to capture our voice and speak with authority, confidence, and enthusiasm. We aim for our message to be relatable, refined, and rewarding. Above all else, for it to engage everyone who walks through the space and prompts them to be part of our network, to advocate for copyright protection, and join the cultural movement that seizes the opportunity to do and be great.
You know, I was just talking to my colleague earlier that as soon as you walk in through the door, you feel a sense of excitement and vibrancy. You can really tell something's happening in here.
The language and design communicate our brand personality. If someone were to describe us to a friend, we would like them to describe us as creative, wise, authentic, empowering, thoughtful, bold, and educational. Well, I think DALRO has done a very good job at really recreating a comfortable space to facilitate interaction, connections, and collaborations.
Whether you're a new employee, copyright holder, or copyright user, you will play an important role in helping us communicate our vision and values. Our space boldly expresses that we are unbiased, objective, and fair in our dealings with stakeholders. We act ethically and deliver on our promise to stakeholders. We are experienced and responsible in how we conduct our business and persistently and resiliently pursue our mission. It makes a statement for us. We are serious about impartiality, integrity, efficiency, and commitment. We care deeply about this, and integrating it into our people and community is important. They are our biggest asset. Welcome to the new DALRO.
That's a statement indeed. And it just makes me so happy to see how happy those staff members are. I really wish I still worked here. No, I'm just joking. It's just wonderful to be back here again. But I think before we get caught up in the beauty of the new DALRO, I do want to keep moving. And I'd like to invite the DALRO board member, Mr. Brian Wafawaroa, to just have a quick chat around copyright. So Brian is the CEO of Juta Publishers. He has over 25 years experience in publishing and learning services. He served as the chairperson of the African Publishers Network for almost 10 years. Brian is the current chairperson of the Publishers Association of South Africa, PASA. He also served on the board of the International Publishers Association, where he chaired the Inclusive Publishing and Literacy Committee. He's the author of many articles and publications on publishing and literacy. In addition, he serves as a trustee and board member for Dubai Cares African Publishing Innovation Fund and Nick Perrin Publishing Foundation. He is knowledgeable in directing digital change and has held executive positions in the publishing field, being the founder and former managing director of New Africa Books, executive director of the Publishing Association of South Africa, and executive chairperson of the South African Book Fair. At Pearson South Africa, where he also served on the board, Brian was the executive director for learning services. He holds an executive master's in business administration from UCT, a master's in literature from Wits University, and honors from the University of Zimbabwe in literature and film. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. So I think we need to get into meat of what DALRO does. I think a lot of our stakeholders are here, but there are a lot of people that don't actually know what is DALRO and have probably never heard of the Dramatic Artistic and Literary Rights Organization before. The acronym is so much better. The full name is such a mouthful. DALRO just rolls off the tongue. So can we get into what is copyright? Brian, would you like to give us a little bit of a breakdown around what copyright is? I know it's not a sexy topic, but we have to try and just make sense of it.
I think I would define copyright as the exclusive right that creators have to the usage of their work. So it's an exclusive right that is granted. But that exclusive right is not absolute, because there are exceptions that are given. Because the whole thing about copyright is to allow creativity on one side and society benefit on the other side. And what copyright tries to do is to strike a balance between those two interests, and those are the types of regulations that you come across. I must emphasize that copyright is only protectable in its expressed format. Mm-hmm. It's not expressed as the idea that sits in Brian's head. You have to express it in some way or the other and record it and keep it in order for it to be protectable. So I love storytelling, and I told a story to a friend, which I thought was a very good story. And 3 months later, I see them publishing it. And as a publisher, I was quite upset, and I said, what can I do about this? And I was in a position to realize there's very little that I could do about it, because I didn't perform it on a stage, I didn't record it, I didn't keep it anywhere. It was gone, and it was there. So if you have a good idea, that you think is worth protecting, express it in one form or the other, write it, record it, date it, keep it somewhere, and it becomes protected that way. You don't have to register it, just the expression and being able to prove that it's your work is enough.
Yeah, I mean, I
Bring it to DALRO.
Yes, yeah, that's key. I think what we always find is that we need to be, as authors of original text or original artistic work, it's important to remember to save the drafts and to be able to, for the worst case scenario where you're in a situation where you need to prove that you're actually the owner, is be able to, like if you're a visual artist, photograph the progression of the work. Or if you're a script writer, email the work to yourself so you have a dated sort of post stamp on the work.
Email it to DALRO.
Email it to DALRO. I also hear stories about DALRO getting a little bit of a portal where things can be put at some point. So let's stay tuned for that at some point. But I think what is also important is that copyright doesn't last forever.
No.
Yeah. So why is it only, how long is it now actually?
Well, it's as long as it's always been in South Africa. It lasts for 50 years after the death of the author, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And there are different types, but I think the most general way of putting it is that 50 years after the death of the author, then the copyright stops to subsist. But as there are exceptions, like I say, sometimes if it's not published before the death of the author, you can imagine then that if only published after the author dies, how do you count the death of the author? Doesn't count. So it will be from the date of the publication of the copyright. There are other examples, but generally speaking, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 50 years was because it was supposed to survive for 2 generations back in 1864. If anybody from the Bern Convention academic.
1866.
So, I mean, essentially, we then got penicillin, and now people last a lot longer. So, but I think also engage with DALRO around estate planning. I mean, it's very important when copyright lasts 50 years after your death to think about what's going to happen to your work after you die. Who's going to own it? Who's going to be benefiting from the many royalties as your death now increases the value of your work? I mean, these are important things to think about, and I mean, they're not very easy, but they're important. But I mean, we've spoken about what various things, like anything that's written down on paper or anything that's put down, nothing that's in your head. And also, there's no quality for originality, not for necessarily for origin. It needs to be original, but it doesn't necessarily have to be good.
No, unfortunately not.
There's no threshold for quality for something to be copyright protected. So nobody's going to be adjudicating whether something is worth being copyright protected.
It just has to be yours and original.
Exactly.
Original, yeah.
But what is copyright usage? We speak about the copyright user. Like, are these people that are just pulling things from libraries and then running off with them? I mean, what is the copyright user?
Yeah, I think that gives me an opportunity to deal with something that is rather irritating. I am involved in debates on copyright that happens at the UN in Geneva, the World Intellectual Property Organization. And many people tend to say copyright is un-African. That's one of the arguments that we come across. And I think sometimes we forget what we are talking about. Because if I give you an example of what happened in traditional society, for example, in West Africa, you would have the griot. And in Southern Africa, you would have the imbongi or nyanduri. And these were people who, when others were going to their fields and looking after their cattle, they stayed behind and curated the knowledge of that community, put it together, whether it was izibongo or praises and the history of that community. It was understood by that community that this person is deriving his livelihood from there because they cannot participate with others in the other activities that are commercial or to look after themselves. So that person was looked after in the king's scroll. It was the responsibility of the king on behalf of the people to look after that person because the work they did was recognized as vital to those people. There's no difference to today. Those people benefited from the performances. The user in this case is a reader like me. It's like a person in a university. It's like a university that wants to put a package together that they can use among their learners. And that's where DALRO becomes critical because I think we have left the stage where books were consumed, for example, in their totality. Now they are consumed in bites and in small chunks. And the putting together of those chunks, if you are not protected by an organization like DALRO, could actually happen without compensation to you. So as they do those compilations, you need to make sure that you are represented. Other users could be fellow publishers. I like something that is in a book that you have published. I want to include part of it in a book. I come to you for permission to use that, and I include it in there. So users are quite a myriad of the utilization of copyright, and you need to make sure that no matter how segregated, separated, chunked up it is, its bits and pieces are protected wherever they are used here.
No, I mean, we mentioned earlier around the various stakeholders. It goes from school to auction houses to book publishers to users within universities, etc. So it's quite a wide array of copyright users. But I also want to understand this difference between intellectual property and physical property. So like surely, if we're looking at the idea of infringement, okay, so that's essentially the use of something that I don't own, or that I don't own the intellectual property without permission. But surely, if I own a Blessing Gobeni piece and it's sitting in my dining room and I want to now include it in my own sort of publication, I own the work, why can't I include it in my own publication?
Because you don't own the copyright in that. When
Okay.
you buy a piece of art, like as you say, Blessings, that is Blessing Gobeni,
Yes.
and there's another fantastic piece in the boardroom by Blessing. If you, before you leave, please go take a look at it. But when you purchase that piece, you only purchase in the physical piece. The copyright in that piece stays with the author, with Blessing. He owns that, and you can't just take it, put it on T-shirts for your family reunion and give it give it to your family members without his permission. You've got to ask for his permission. That's where we come in. That we, as DALRO, we handle Blessing's permissions on his behalf. Because guess what? Where do we want Blessing? In the studio, crafting his artwork, rather than on the phone giving permissions to people. So yes, so you do need permission in order to do that. Do not put Blessing's work on your coffee mugs for Christmas presents without his permission. That is wrong.
No, I think I've always told people, if you're unsure, come to DALRO. I mean, it's as simple as thinking that if you walk into a bookshop and you buy a play and you think you can just perform it, that's not the case. You own the book. You don't own the right to perform it. So always come to DALRO just to double check whether you're allowed to do something. But just to close this off, I wanted to find out if there's anything else that you wanted to touch on around copyright that you feel like the audience should know.
I just wanted to add something important, which is the moral rights. And that is the right to be duly associated and acknowledged for your work. Whether it is cited by others or used by others, you need to be recognized as that. Even if you sell that copyright to somebody else, moral rights cannot be alienated from you. They remain. And it also something that protects you from defilement of your work, and to get to a point where you can really say, this is no longer my work, and therefore I don't want to be associated with that. I'll give a quick example. Jonathan Zapiro drew a cartoon which he called Evolution, where we started as monkeys, and at our best we were Nelson Mandela. And then we started declining into monkeys again. I don't want to mention somebody's name, but we ended up as monkeys. And what some minister did, I won't mention their name, was to take that cartoon and remove all the parts up to Nelson Mandela and take it away and leave the decline into monkeyhood, and then claim that this is what Zapiro thinks about black people. Now, that was a clear misrepresentation of what Zapiro meant. It was a defilement of his work, and I am surprised that he didn't act on it. But that's what we call moral rights, the integrity of your work, being associated with your work in the form that you intended, and not to be abused and still be attributable to you like that. I just thought that would be important to mention.
Thank you, Brian. That's a very fair point. I mean, there's a whole string of permissions that need to come if you want to adapt somebody's work correctly. And the moral right is a very important part where if you're stripping that representation from the artist and the association to it, it's completely unacceptable. So thank you both, Brian and Lazarus. I don't want to keep you on stage anymore. I'm going to now like to invite Linda Simelane to come and join me over here. I'd like to talk a little bit about the DALRO campaign. Yes, give them a round of applause. So with a new brand, with a new space, with a new organization's rebirth, there is inevitably a PR campaign. And just to talk a little bit about that, I want Linda Simelane to join me. He's an independent idealist and dynamic queer individual. He's a compassionate and lover of art, a brilliant project manager whose experience includes customer service, contact center management, and sales marketing. His experience also includes radio production and presenting, and he's currently studying towards a business management qualification. Thank you for joining me up here.
Thank you for having me. It feels like an Oprah Winfrey show, except it's an DALRO Alice Bell show. So thank you very much.
Wow.
Is everyone getting? You're getting one, and you're all getting one at the end.
That
of the
comes
show.
later.
But thank you so much for inviting me. It's such an honor to come through and speak about this.
Well, Linda, I mean, we worked on. I was here at the beginning when we started thinking about this campaign. What is the essence of the development of that campaign for you and your team, and where have we gotten to now?
So like Bingwa said in the beginning, it's blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
That's what it is. But ideally and holistically, what PR or what it is that we want to promote with Enjoy is to, like Brale said, now that mom said, get away, you're over 50 now, so please go find your own. How do you then get out and make sure that you don't stumble, right, on your own? But also look into promoting a copyright culture, right? And that's what it is that we want to do. Do a lot of people know about copyrights, and that's what we want to promote, right? We've also then had to look into traditional media. As we know, newspapers, television, magazines, and radio have been the biggest traditional media that we've used over the years. But over the years, media has developed, and things are instant now, and we have digital media because it's instant, it's now, it's current, there's hashtags, and if it's not trending, it means nobody's talking about it. That's where we want to be. We want to trend, but trend for the very good reasons. Trend for being educational, trend for promoting the copyright culture. And those are some of the things that we've then had to look at when we came up with this entire thing, because it needs to promote that you finding a friend who's using someone else's work without crediting someone's work, and you going to DALRO and saying, I know my friend, he's my friend, but I'm actually going to tell you that he stole someone's work. And that's what it is that we want to do, right? But also for people to understand who DALRO is, where DALRO is now, where DALRO wants to go, and how DALRO will represent them, the user, the rights holder. And also for someone who just wants to be part of the DALRO culture. And like I said, promoting the copyright culture. And that's where the holistic sort of thinking came into place.
Excellent. I think it's quite a multifaceted campaign.
Absolutely.
I'm very excited, and obviously, as representing such a creative organization, I'm sure there are going to be quite creative and out-of-the-box activations around
Oh,
it.
absolutely.
So we'll all keep an eye out for
Please do.
like flash mobs and things.
And I like that you touch on that because when it comes to consuming media or consuming communication, we all do it differently now. I want to take a jog and still listen to a podcast. I would rather listen to a book than read a book, you know? So all of what we've come up with the Enjoy campaign encompasses all of that. The ultimate goal is still, of course, to promote copyright culture, to make sure that the users and the rights holders are represented well by DALRO, but also still make sure that you get what is due to you, you know? So we've had to think about all of that in our development processes.
And just to close off a little bit, who specifically are you attracting in this campaign?
Like you've been touching on, the universities, law firms, you, myself, everyone here in this room, those are the people that we're attracting. We are attracting industries across the world, the country, you know, construction industries. We want to attract schools. We want to attract, like I said, universities. So the market, or rather the audience, will continue to grow, but mainly we will still keep to the mandate.
Linda, I think we've been speaking a little bit too much. I think we should let the campaign speak for
I
itself.
think so too.
Without further ado, the Enjoy campaign.
How do you create a copyright culture that fosters collaboration, leads to engaging, respectful debate and discussion for better protection of creative output and intellectual property? Enjoy! We're building. Enjoy! We aim our message to be relatable, refined, and rewarding. Enjoy! We strongly believe we can achieve a copyright utopia where people and industries come together naturally to advocate for the growth and protection of the value of copyright. Enjoy! We create awareness and participation, and our language and design communicate our personality. Enjoy! Being creative, being authentic, being wise, thoughtful, and empowering. Being bold, efficient, and committed. Enjoy! At DALRO, we create the kind of collaborative atmosphere we want to see across industries. As we administer copyright and performing rights for literary, artistic, and dramatic works and provide advice on their protection, we want you to be educated and to advocate for copyright so that we may all enjoy creative works within legal bounds. Visit our website on www.dalro.co.za for more.
Thank you, everyone. I will hand over back to Bongani. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Give that a show.
All right. Are you enjoying the evening? In fact, what I'm going to do now is invite all our panelists to come back onto the stage. So if Bralaz, Elroy, and of course Brian can come back for an opportunity to answer any questions. And I wondered if anybody in the audience has a question or two. Of course, we will have an opportunity for media to ask questions directly for the invited media that are with us, but just as a broad opportunity to ask questions. I mean, I think the copyright conversation, I'm trying to hide from Malcolm Perkey because he taught me at university many, many years ago. Probably doesn't even remember. But I remember being at school and putting on plays with no idea that I had to ask anybody for permission to do so. There's a lot of assumption. People think, as you said, if I own the painting, if it's on my wall, I can do with it what I like. But obviously, one of the things, as you said, that's part of your mandate, is to go on an education drive to make sure that the public are aware of the limits in terms of what they can do with other people's works.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, as you saw, the campaign is about centered around education, because to make people advocate for what we do, they have to have the understanding of what it is that we do. And I will be first to confess that I've often 9 out of 10 people that I meet have never heard of DALRO and do not know, even those that have heard of it, don't know what we do. And I think the time has come now where we bring our community into the knowledge and education.
Because it's not just ignorant high school students. No. It could be even lawyers in a law firm, right? Okay, do we have any questions?
I'm Lerato from LexisNexis. Okay, I have 2 questions, but I'll ask it in one. What's your view on copyright infringement? I know Brian touched on the Africanism element of the right to education, right? But now that is what students are advocating for, that it's my right to gain access to content for my education. So I want to know what your view is on copyright infringement, and do you guys have a plan set for the policing within that space?
Okay.
My view about infringement is that infringement is a very sexy word for crime, for theft. You know, basically when you're using somebody's property without permission, that's what you're doing. You are depriving them of the right to enjoy their creation. the right to grant other the correct permission to utilize, right? And I think it was mentioned earlier, like the similarity between intellectual property and physical property. I'll make an example. If you go into somebody's house and occupy it without paying rent, without his permission, everyone will know that you are hijacking that space. You are doing something wrong. And there's no difference between doing that with somebody's copyright.
So let me follow up and say, how far do we go when we talk about things like fair usage, for example?
Now, as Brian earlier said, the copyright's aim is to maintain a balance, to give access to the use. So nobody wants to build a house and nobody lives in it. Again, or property must be enjoyed, right? So the idea is that there should be a balance, and balance means that it's fairness. It should be fair to the creator, that they should be remunerated. It should be fair to the student, as you say, to have access, to the business person to have access. The question is, where do you place that balance?
All right, how do you police it?
I mean, sorry, if I can just add on to what Lazarus is saying as well, I think it's very important to note also the concept around why copyright legislation exists. It was established to promote innovation. It is established to encourage people to create new work so that they can benefit financially from that as well. It's also important to understand from a student perspective, yes, okay, I'd like to understand how I can access this work now at this stage of my career so that I can grow. But then what happens when I'm at the stage of my career, when I want to contribute with content? How am I going to benefit from that? So I think I just wanted to add that on to Lazarus' point. Sorry, Brian.
When you take somebody's work and use it, we need to check whether you are doing that for the purposes of citation, for the purposes of your research or education. Are you taking more than 10% out of that? Are you doing that to try and avoid paying and therefore deprive the author of their income? And are you competing with the legitimate commercial interests of the author? Those are the checks and balances that come in there. Any copyright law that doesn't have those checks and balances, I think, in my opinion, is unfair. And as per Lazarus, I don't think we should allow politicians to get away with obfuscation of them not doing their work. What is usually presented as education, which is seductive, is actually a confusion of copyright and funding. Protecting authors' rights in their copyright does not really mean that you are undermining education, because when learners do not have books, it's a funding issue. It's not a copyright issue. So you cannot, I would like to participate in the development of the country as an author or as a publisher, but I don't want to carry that burden alone. I need the state using taxpayers' money, including the taxes that I pay, to cover that gap rather than say the author should carry it. How do we police that? I think it's quite difficult, and I think it's an education issue as well. If you think explaining copyright is difficult, try and go to a police station and say to a constable, somebody has stolen my copyright. Just try and do that and see how far you go. So there is a lot that we have to do by way of education. But I would like to plead on copyright holders also on our responsibility in terms of creating better access. The reason why there are laws and the reason why we have difficulties is that that mandate is not adequately covered. So we have to be very creative around how we package our materials, how we reach out to people to be able to use those materials. If we package them in a manner that makes them inaccessible, then you will have a lot of things happening around that. And part of the role that DALRO does is precisely to facilitate that access, make it better, while it's making sure that the author and the rights holder are adequately compensated.
All right, we had a question. Yes, there you go. We had a question over there.
I know that the Copyright Amendment Bill has been passed by the National Assembly. I just wanted to ask, what are the main features of this bill, and how does it assist creatives for the better? Thank you.
Well, the copyright bill, right? I was hoping it never comes up tonight. the bane of our lives. Well, First of all, I think that the intention of the copyright bill was noble. All right, it was to protect the creators to give, but also to give access to works, to copyrighted works, as Brian said. Unfortunately, that balance was lost somewhere in the politicking. As you know, the one thing we do well in South Africa is bring politics into everything. And so that balance has unfortunately been lost somewhere, to the extent that, in our opinion, I should say, that balance has been skewed and it's become prejudicial to the creator, in that there is a broad, it brings across a very broad exception for things like education, and that may be interpreted to mean that now you can do anything you like as long as it's for reasons of education, depriving creators of their income. And I think it could have been better written, could have been better drafted.
Yeah, I think the other problem is that if you put it together with the Performance Amendment Bill, you have an indigestible amalgamation of things that are not related. So where it scores better for creators in the performance area, it actually undermines those that are in the literary field. Because some of the things that they are trying to achieve there have been part of the tradition that you have in publishing and in writing. But I think they just lumped up too many things that are not related. The other thing I think is lack of understanding of the commercial reality around these activities. If you talk about education in Europe, we are probably talking about 30% of the publishing sector. If you talk about education in Africa, you are talking of up to 95% of the market that you are dealing with. So if you want to be liberal and permissive around how the materials are used in education, you are probably undermining at least 60% of that market. And everything else becomes non-viable, because even the non-education materials are sustained by the activities in education. So I think we are throwing the baby away with the bathwater, and there's a lot of proper interrogation that has to happen, especially from an education perspective as well.
But
And
to be
perhaps-
fair, there is some small positive side to it, especially for visual artists, that it brings, it now provides for the resale right, for artistic resale rights, which we have been advocating for and lobbying for many years. And hopefully that's the one thing that, even though we advocate for this bill to be changed still, to be making, that will stay, that the visual artists will now enjoy that right, which is enjoyed in the civilized world.
Perhaps now it's appropriate for the vote of thanks, and I'm going to invite Professor Sehaukele Ngubane to come forward and deliver that. He is, of course, at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and currently serves as the academic head of performing arts. He's also a professor of the isiZulu language, literature and culture, and one of the most experienced and respected isiZulu linguists in the nation. He's also, I'm pleased to tell you, the person who translated the South African Constitution from English in isiZulu. That is in fact one of his accomplishments. And he is the previous KZN convener of the South African Translators Institute and a translator himself. Prof.
Thank you very much, Program Director. I think that was a mouthful. Maybe let me just greet you in isiZulu for a change. Sanbonani. Molweni. Dumelang. Tobela. Yeah. Thank you very much. I think I'm very much honored to be here this evening when we relaunch our new offices. It's like a facelift to our offices. And we just want to thank everybody and every one of you who's here. That's why that's my strategy when I do the vote of thanks. I start off by thanking everyone who's here so that I don't miss anyone. So can you give yourselves a round of applause? Yeah. Why I'm doing this is because you are important. this event would never been a success if you were not here. So you've made the day very smooth. And also, I also want to thank our panelists. What I can say as the chairperson of DALRO is to echo all that has been said. So, to be safe, I didn't realize that you will have this heated debates about the cap and all stuff. I thought we were on leave and on holiday, but it did come out. So that's why I just want to summarize it by saying I echo everything that has been said by our MD and also our fellow board member. But on behalf of the board of directors of DALRO, we want to thank you very much and thank our managing director for putting this is a show. You agree with me? This is a show.
Somebody
It's like we are in a movie. I saw some of the celebrities appearing on the screen. But what impressed me is the last one, the last episode. Enjoy! Enjoy! I hope you are enjoying. You're still going to enjoy after this. And also, thank you very much for everyone who have put this event together. Some of the things, when I came here around after 5, some of the things were not here. Then I went for a drink, and when I came back, I noticed something. So I'm also taken by surprise by what DALRO staff under the leadership of Lazarus have done. You have outdone yourself. Can we give them a round of applause? I think I must stop there because I don't want to make a long speech. It is very late in the evening, and the purpose is to showcase our new offices. I hope you have loved the offices, you love them, and even our artwork here is out of this world. And I just want to say thank you, and a big thank you to all of you, and thank you very much for having you. We have friends, we have right holders present here. I don't want to embarrass some people, but we have a CEO of PASA here, Mpuka Randuka. Sometimes there's always a competition between CEOs and chairpersons. Brian happens to be the chairperson of PASA, but we have a man who's hands-on. Like ourselves, we are not hands-on. We are just playing an oversight role for the direction of DALRO. So we want to acknowledge you. I saw my other friend, Andre. I saw many people who are here, and we are grateful that you are here. Veronica, and all publishers here, authors who are here, artists that are here, media people, we want to thank you very much. And we want to thank the caterers as well. Sometimes when you pass the vote of thanks, we are given a list, a long list. You must never forget to thank this. So, but I just put it in one word, a big thank you to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Prof, of course, as you know, is the chairperson of DALRO and was recently awarded the title Man of Magnitude. This is in New York City and in recognition of his efforts to promote African languages.
That's fantastic.
We thank you, Man of Magnitude. Linda, I think you wanted to say one or two things.
Yes, I actually wanted to thank you and all the speakers. So with the help of Laverne Rayner, ladies and gentlemen, please, Tuwani, we want to thank you so much for such a stellar job. Please receive a thank you from us. Elroy, thank you so much for coming through. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to be here with us. Brian, always coming through. Thank you so much. And of course to Prof, please come through and receive your thank you. So thank you to all of the speakers, and thank you to you all for coming.
Yes, Prof.
Enjoy!